everybody. Welcome back to the Persistence Outdoors podcast. As always, it's Samuel Allred on the mic, and today we're going to talk about why you need a training plan and how to build one. I'll start off with a question. Will you be physically ready for your hunts this fall? It's not even summer yet, but now is the time to answer that question. Because if you wait until fall or even midsummer to think about it, you're going to be behind. It's kind of like signing up for a marathon or a half marathon, but then waiting until 2 weeks out to start running. Some people can pull it off just by sheer willpower, but it's not going to be fun, and you're certainly not going to perform your best. So what do you do instead? When you're preparing for an athletic event, you give yourself 3 or 4 months and you follow some sort of training plan. And in my opinion, hunting is no exception. Depending on the species and the location and the terrain, hunting is right up there with challenges like racing a half marathon or completing a triathlon. In some cases, it's even harder because you'll have to get up and make an effort multiple days in a row, which is really something many other athletes don't have to deal with. Plus, you'll likely be getting up early, going to bed late, having to endure all types of weather, maybe not getting the best nutrition. So in many ways, the cards are stacked against you. Preparing physically for your hunt is going to improve your experience drastically, and it will likely improve your chances for success as well. Now, maybe you've listened this far and you're thinking, look, I hunt deer every year. I'm not in particularly good shape, but I get it done. And if that's you, I totally understand. This episode is more applicable to intensive multi-day hunts like elk hunting, backcountry hunting, spot and stalk, bear hunts, etc. But I think a training plan can be helpful even for hunters who aren't hiking that far or packing out huge animals. Think about dragging a buck 800 yards through a forest. I can tell you from experience, it's pretty tough. And if you're in poor shape, it's going to limit where you go and how you hunt, not to mention increase your risk for injury. So while your training plan as an ag country whitetail deer hunter might look a little different than that of a mountain mule deer hunter, for example, it's still worthwhile, and there's really no downsides to becoming stronger and more fit. All right, before we get further into this, if you enjoy this podcast, or you've learned something new, please take a moment to give it a 5-star rating on whatever platform you listen on, leave a comment or a positive review, and send an episode to a friend. These things will help the podcast grow, and as it grows, will help more people get outside and into hunting. Thank you so much for your support, and let's get back to it. When creating a training plan, the first question I would ask is, what are my goals? What do I want to be able to do? It's likely that your goals are a little vague at the beginning, like, I want to be physically prepared for my week-long archery elk hunt this fall. So it helps to take these goals and parse out what you'll actually be doing. On an archery elk hunt, for example, you can expect miles of hiking every day, significant elevation change, rugged terrain, multiple days of hunting, and if you're successful, a heavy pack out. So now that you've identified what you'll actually be doing, you can determine the type of training you need to do to prepare. And I hope that doesn't come across as too obvious. I think it's important because you could go to the gym consistently for 3 months, but if you're doing the wrong kind of workouts, you may not be prepared for your hunt, right? Let's say you're doing lots of bodybuilding style exercises that work isolated muscles and focus on hypertrophy, on building muscle. You may have an awesome beach bod, but functionally, you won't have the aerobic engine, stamina, or mobility that you need to get around in the mountains. So it is important to drill down on what your goals are and what you'll actually be doing. You can get as specific as you want with this. For example, you might decide that you want to be able to hike 9 miles with a 40-pound pack in 3 hours. And that's not a benchmark or anything. Every person's goals are going to vary, but having a goal like this will help you backwards engineer the rest of your training plan. The next question I would ask is, how much time do I have? Time during your day, time during your week, and time until your hunting season. It's easy to get motivated and set a lofty goal, but then you realize you don't have enough time. Or more realistically, you don't want to set aside enough time to achieve your goal. I think most people probably have more time than they think they do, but less time than they would like. And setting aside time to work out does have an opportunity cost. So you have to figure out for yourself what a reasonable amount of time is and what you can be consistent with. I've trained anywhere from 3 to 6 days a week, even 7 days a week in high school. And as an adult working a 9 to 5, I'm usually training for an hour or so on a weekday. Some of you may be able to train more than that. Some of you might not even be able to train that much. Whatever you've got, just be honest with yourself and make the best of the time you have. I also mentioned the amount of time until your hunting season. If you have 4 months, you might have some time to ease into training, work on your aerobic base, and build a really solid foundation before getting into hunt-specific training. And on the flip side, you'll also need to make sure that you don't burn yourself out with too much intensity over the course of 16 weeks. If you only have 2 months to prepare, you may want to approach things a little differently. You might jump into hunt-specific training like rucking to get into the mindset as much as possible and start getting your muscles used to the specific motion of walking with a pack. And you may not have the same foundation that you would have if you had 4 months to train, but it's definitely going to be better than doing nothing. Once you've determined how much time you have to commit to training, you may have to modify your goals a little. For example, how many guys walk out of an action movie thinking, I'm going to get a six-pack and I'm going to look just like that movie star by summer? But very few people actually achieve that sort of body. And just for a moment, let's take steroids out of the picture. Most people aren't going to commit the amount of time it takes both during the week and over the course of a year to get to that physical level. It's the same way with hunting. If you've only got 3 hours a week to train, you can't really expect to become some sort of super athlete like Cam Hanes. And I don't say this to discourage you. I just think it's important to be honest with yourself in your goals. And if you realize that you do want to prioritize your fitness more than you currently are, you can always figure out ways to do that. All right, so you've determined what you're trying to achieve, and you've determined the amount of time you have to dedicate to the task at hand. Well, what do you actually need to include in your training plan? If I had to make it as simple as possible, I would recommend 2 things: long hikes, occasionally with a heavy pack, and full body resistance training, maybe twice a week. The hiking directly correlates to hunting, especially Western hunting, and the resistance training, especially compound movements like deadlifts and squats, will help you become stronger and avoid injury. If you did those 2 things consistently, progressing over time, without injuring yourself, you're likely to be better equipped than the majority of hunters out there. With that said, I think there's more you can do. So let me explain my philosophy when it comes to training. Something of a disclaimer here. To be perfectly clear, I'm not a coach or a licensed practitioner of any sort. This is my approach to training after years of being an athlete myself, trying new things, researching, and all of that. So certainly do your own research and try things out for yourself. But I think this is a pretty balanced approach that can help you get started on the right path. The first thing I would recommend is to find ways to increase your activity. A lot of us modern Americans work a desk job, we're sedentary, and so the first thing we need to do is get up and move. This could be walking, this could be hiking, jogging, playing a sport, swimming, biking. What you're really looking for is lots of low-level activity that isn't going to put too much stress on your body. It will keep you mobile, keep you functional, and over time, all this extra activity will add up and actually help increase the number of mitochondria in your cells and help them to become more efficient. And without getting too much into the weeds, increased mitochondria and mitochondrial efficiency is desirable because it will help you maintain a healthy metabolism, stay lean, process lactate in your muscles, and feel energized. The more mitochondria you develop and the more efficient they become, the more energy and stamina you will have overall. All of these things are important for general health, and they're even more important for hunters who are going to spend long days hiking and hunting multiple days in a row. In many ways, your low-level activity provides a base that everything else is built upon. Now, on top of low-level activity, it's a good idea to add some resistance training. Like I mentioned earlier, resistance training will help you become stronger and, if done correctly, help you prevent injury. I really like deadlifts and squats because they are highly functional movements. They strengthen many different parts of your body, and they'll help you increase your capacity to carry a heavy pack without hurting yourself. You do have to be careful with these big compound lifts. Make sure to ease into them. Don't lift more than what you can handle. You may find that your core is not strong enough to stabilize you starting out, so you may need to incorporate some other resistance and strength exercises as well to prepare your body for these big lifts. When you're thinking about training for hunting, it's important to realize that you're training in a different way than a lot of other people at the gym are. You don't necessarily have to become a bodybuilder to be a solid hunter. And truthfully, you probably don't want all that extra muscle and weight that a bodybuilder might carry in the mountains. It's likely to slow you down. But you do need to be strong enough to roll an animal over, drag it a ways, hang quarters in a tree, and present your weapon for unsupported close-range shots. So you might consider lifting moderate weight, but staying super consistent with it, maybe 2 times a week to gain the benefits of resistance training. But in my opinion, this isn't the main focus for hunters, and you don't have to go overboard. So once you've increased your activity level and you have a resistance training routine in place, now you can really think about optimizing and pushing yourself. And that's where intensity comes in. This might mean cranking up the pace on your hikes, attacking some hills, adding weight to your pack, adding interval or sprint training into your aerobic workouts, anything that's going to get your heart rate up, build your mental toughness, and force your body to adapt to discomfort. The thing with intensity, though, is that you have to be careful with it. Intensity is highly stressful on your body, and if you overdo it, you're likely going to injure yourself or wear yourself down. So it has to be used judiciously to help boost your overall fitness and reach breakthroughs, but not so much that you're hurting yourself, not recovering, and functioning with a weakened immune system. Even top athletes only sustain serious intensity for a limited amount of time. They'll train with the goal of peaking near their competition date, and then they'll scale back to recover for a time, and then they'll keep increasing and reducing intensity in a process known as periodization. We're not going to get into periodization here, but you can kind of think of it like seasonality. Seasonality is built in for hunters because of the actual hunting seasons. If you're an elk hunter, you want to perform at your peak during the elk season. But it doesn't make sense to risk getting injured or burnt out in the off season. So you might consider increased activity volume, but with less intensity in the winter and spring months, but then ramp up the intensity as you get closer to the elk season. Now, that may be a simplistic way to look at it because you're likely hunting more than one season, or maybe there are other things you like to do outside during the rest of the year, but I think you get the gist. What I want to emphasize is that intensity needs to be used intelligently. I can give you an example of not using it intelligently. So last year, I was training for elk hunting season, and I was thinking about the possibility of packing an elk out in rugged country. And I was really fixated on this idea of rucking with a heavy pack to simulate the pack out experience. And generally, I think that's a good idea, right? It's good to prepare yourself with some heavy pack training so you're not too shocked or incapable when you actually have to do it in the field. But I kind of went too far with it. About 8 weeks from the season, I started doing 2 heavy 1-hour rucks a week. And I worked up to 115 pounds, over 2/3 of my body weight, and some significant intensity. Well, I was doing this on top of already lifting heavy twice a week, and pretty quickly I started to feel a lot of pain in my knees. So what I was doing to prepare for a big pack out on a hunt was actually breaking me down way before the hunt even began, both because I was doing too much of it and also because I probably wasn't strong enough to maintain that amount of intensity for 8 weeks, doing that sort of thing twice a week for 8 weeks. So while it was a good idea and it was helping me prepare mentally, I actually had to scale way back to make sure I didn't ruin my knees and have to sit out the hunting season. Now when I'm training, I do a lot more hiking with a light pack and then do maybe 1 heavy ruck a week for 3 or 4 weeks leading up to the season. That way I can mentally prepare. I still get the benefits of the intensity, but it's not breaking me down more than it builds me up. And then once the hunting season is over, I'm going to quit the heavy pack rucking for a while, make sure my knees are in good shape, and prioritize recovery before getting back into it. So recovery, let's talk about that. Recovery is where you actually get stronger. No matter what you're doing, whether you're on a meticulously prepared workout plan or just hitting the gym when you can, if you don't recover, you're not going to progress. You may get mentally tougher, but in order for your body to strengthen and grow, you need to recover. And like I said before, if you're doing intense workouts without recovering, you're opening yourself up to injury and even sickness. The main levers of recovery are sleep, nutrition, and hydration. If you can get good sleep every night, eat nutritious foods that aren't going to work against you, and drink enough hydrating fluids, you're going to recover faster and be able to maintain periods of intensity for longer. So let's talk about sleep. Most people need around 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night to function optimally. Younger people generally need more than older people, and athletes, like you, are likely to need more sleep than the general population. When it comes to sleep, it's not just the duration that counts, it's also the quality. So doing things like having a consistent bedtime and wake up time keeping your room dark and cool, minimizing sugar and alcohol, especially before bed. All of these things are going to help you get a better night's sleep and actually recover from your activity. Two other things that you might consider in regards to sleep that I think are helpful to think about are screen use before bed and sleeping with your mouth open. Both of these things can lead to lower quality sleep. The screen use thing is hard, especially when you've got multiple jobs or projects going on or need to work late, but I think it is worth paying attention to. You want to minimize it, especially in that last hour or so before you try to go to bed. And as far as sleeping with your mouth open, that can actually reduce your sleep quality as well. And it can also lead to apnea. So I've had a lot of success personally by using a little postage stamp sized piece of medical tape that I put over my lips. And it just helps encourage me to sleep with my mouth closed. It's kind of like a little reminder. And it also makes it slightly harder to breathe through my mouth with my lips just slightly taped together. It's dramatically improved my sleep. It's reduced my snoring, and it should help prevent apnea over time. So those are just some extra tips to help get the best sleep possible. Let's talk about food. Nutrition is a hot topic right now with diets like veganism, vegetarianism, the carnivore diet, keto. They're all duking it out. Here's what I'll say. For the most part, everyone agrees that whole foods, less processed foods are better for you. Junk foods like processed convenience foods, refined sugars, a lot of breads, sweets, these foods are going to work against you by messing up your metabolism and creating inflammation in your body. So, as a general rule, try to stick with minimally processed foods. Personally, I loosely adhere to an animal-based diet, which prioritizes animal proteins and fats, but it also incorporates natural sources of carbs like fruits and honey, and I feel pretty good on it. So take that as you will. For your body to repair itself and to recover, you're going to need sufficient protein. It's also helpful to have carbs, but I would say it's usually harder to get an optimal amount of protein than it is to get enough carbs. So if you're really hitting it hard, make sure to get some nutritious, protein-heavy meals. I can literally feel it in my body when I'm not getting enough protein. My body feels more sore and achy. I'm a lot more likely to get sick, and I generally have a reduced desire to train. On the other hand, when I am getting enough protein, I feel energized, I recover quickly, and I'm able to train harder on my intense training days. The third lever of training is hydration. It's not actually true that the more water you drink, the better. There's an optimal range, but with increased activity, you will want to drink when you're thirsty, and often even a little more than that. Sometimes when I'm hiking or hunting, it feels inconvenient to grab my water bottle or to treat some more water. So I drink less than I should, and I end up getting dehydrated. And trust me, nothing is going to kill your energy and prevent you from performing like getting super dehydrated. Whenever I get dehydrated, even on a day hike, I feel like I have to take a giant nap to rebound again. So pay attention to your fluid intake. You want to be peeing regularly, not all the time, not completely clear, but regularly. And also make sure you're replenishing your salts with a pinch of table salt or an electrolyte mix if you're making an effort and sweating a lot. Some of this is going to be trial and error, but again, it's worth paying attention to, and it's going to help you recover well so you can put in a good effort day after day. Okay, so now we've gone over all the building blocks of a good training plan. There are more things that you could add, maybe mobility work, core strengthening work, supplemental exercises, things like that. But I think increased baseline activity, resistance training, intensity, and recovery are the main pillars of a successful training plan. So what I'll do is actually make a spreadsheet, usually for 12 or 16 weeks, and start plugging in the types of workouts I want to do. Sometimes it's as simple as a weekly routine that I pretty much repeat over and over. Other times I'll get into the details of incorporating periodization, specific monthly goals, recovery weeks, backing off volume the week before a hunt, etc. Just as an example, my weekly routine is going to look something like this as I start preparing for fall hunts. On Mondays, I plan to do a very short sprint session, very intense, but also very low volume, something like 8 10-second sprints with a minute rest in between. That's it. I learned this sort of workout from Mark Sisson. It helps promote growth hormone and keeps you super mobile. On Tuesdays, I'll go to the gym and do essentially a full body resistance workout. I'll probably do squats as the main event with some pushing and pulling exercises as well. On Wednesdays, I'll walk for a half an hour or an hour, just focusing on recovery, call it good. On Thursdays, I plan to do some knees over toes mobility work and some core work, just light, easy movements, focusing on mobility and preventing imbalances. And then Fridays will be my second gym day, also a full body day, but switching out squats for deadlifts. And then on Saturdays, I'll go on a long walk or a hike with my pack. And on Sundays, I'll try to walk or do some more mobility work. So there you see a lot of low-level activity, 2 days of resistance training, and just a little bit of intensity sprinkled in with the sprints. Most of this I can get done in about an hour every day, and I'm confident that even with my job, even with the podcast, I'll be able to eat and sleep enough to recover. I'm hoping this will give me a good on-ramp, and then as I get closer to the hunting season, I'll likely reduce my squat and deadlift volume, increase my hiking pace and get some elevation in, and then add in a heavy pack hike here and there. So let me know what you think. Does that seem reasonable to you? Does it seem too easy? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot me an email at persistenceoutdoors2022@gmail.com or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, just to round this out, after the season, I'll take a few weeks off to recover, just walking every day and making sure that everything heals up properly and I can start fresh in a new training period. All right, guys. Well, this has been a packed episode, and it may seem like a lot of work to create a training plan, especially if you've never done it before. But the thing is, a training plan can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. And once you have it, it's going to help you stay consistent and stay motivated to train. And it's also going to help you understand how you're progressing and if you're progressing faster or slower than you intended. As I wrap this up, I do want to leave you with one more thought. In my opinion, thinking through and creating a training plan is in some ways more important and useful than actually following the plan in the future. You may be thinking, why are you telling me this now? But let me explain this a little. Instead of thinking of my training plan as a rigid, unchanging, regimented thing, I think of it more as an outline. I'm creating a big picture strategy to achieve my goals, but I have lots of flexibility when it comes to the day-to-day routine. For example, let's say I've been planning to go to the gym, but it's a beautiful day outside. Well, maybe I'll go hike that day and go to the gym the next day. For me, it's no big deal to switch those things around. Or maybe I was lifting heavy and don't feel recovered on the day I was planning to do a heavy pack ruck. Well, maybe that day I'll ditch the heavy weight and do it another day when I'm less likely to injure myself. I think having a flexible approach to training makes it much more sustainable. Most of us are not professional athletes. We have day jobs, we have other responsibilities, and it's more important that we're doing something, being consistent, increasing our activity, and making progress than it is that we follow our plan to a T. But by making the plan in the first place, you've thought through everything ahead of time, you've come up with a strategy, and it's going to help you prioritize and stay on track when life inevitably happens. All right, guys, I hope this episode has been helpful for you. I really appreciate all of you who listen to and support this podcast. I'll be back next Tuesday with another one. And if you haven't already, start thinking now about how you're going to prepare for your hunts this fall.